Hi, I'm Denise Walsh, and you're listening to the Heart Healthy Hustle podcast by my friend, Jonathan Frederick. Our thoughts and our emotions impact what hormones and what genes are turned on and off. 25 years old, I got out of school with my master's and I got my first job. I'm off to save the world. And I realized, okay, this is not what I expected. I don't want to be here for 30 years. I don't know what else to do because this was all that I was taught. And I went through a couple years of just trying to figure out my what's next, knowing that I had this heart, but not quite knowing what to do with it.
Welcome back to another inspiring episode of the Heart Healthy Hustle. We are joined today with Denise Walsh. Denise is a proud wife and mother, former clinical psychologist and motivational speaker, also multi-million-dollar earning entrepreneur. Denise started her career by working with families at a local mental health agency as a clinical psychologist, but left the practice to pursue a successful career in the direct sales industry. Her impact as a leader in that field, coupled with her certification as a Jack Canfield trainer and experiences as an elite coach with the John Maxwell Team, has given her the unique ability to help people tap into their ultimate potential and find their greatness. She has found her calling, inspiring others to go after their dreams, and has helped more than 1 million people find their purpose and fulfill their God-given destiny. Denise, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Will you start out with a favorite success quote or a saying you live by? Share with my audience what you got and what it means to you.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. So my favorite saying that I live by is, I love where I am and I know where I'm going. It's kind of twofold because I feel like I'm a type A personality. I love the finish line. I love setting a goal and running to hit it. But what I found throughout the years is that type of attitude can leave you restless in today. And I've also found that some people don't set goals because they think things like, I should be grateful for where I am and I shouldn't want more. And they feel guilty for dreaming. And so they want to stay here rather than continuing to grow. So I found the balance of both, or I strive to find the balance of both, of being grateful and present and loving where I am, but having vision for my future that keeps me fueled and fired up.
Fantastic. Get right into the interview. What are the 3 highlight takeaways you pulled from working as a certified Jack Canfield trainer and from your experiences as an elite coach with the John Maxwell Team?
Good question. 3 highlight takeaways. First of all, success leaves clues. And when I went to I had 2 weeks with Jack Canfield. I got to speak in front of him. I learned all the transformational exercises that he does throughout his events. We were in a space with other leaders and trainers and coaches. And I realized that we're all the same. Success leaves clues. And Jack Canfield uses Upwork and Fiverr and other, outsourcing mediums just like we do. And again, it was just a humbling experience to realize he knows where he's going. He's excited about it, but he's just somebody that works hard too. And so I was able to pick up and build my own confidence just by being surrounded by such like-minded, focused, and excited people. And John Maxwell was the same. You think he is made millions and really pioneered the leadership development space, but you think of he just stayed focused on leadership for 30, 40 years. And he's just stayed in his zone. He hasn't veered left or veered right. He's just stayed focused and created momentum in that space. So number 1 was success leaves clues. Number 2 was focus forms your future. And you can't really spread yourself too thin. It really is honing in on one thing and then being the expert in that. And then the 3rd was to always level up. I feel like I level up when I choose to surround myself with people who are better than me. And so I'm consistently seeking out people that are doing what I want to do and have skills that I want to have, and being in those environments. We since created mastermind groups with other people who were there. And it's those experiences that I think help to keep me dreaming, because otherwise it would honestly be easier to, quote unquote, just be a mom or watch Netflix on Friday nights or whatever it is. It would be kind of easier not to keep dreaming, but being in those situations inspire me to keep dreaming.
Inspiring. The 3 were success leaves clues, focus forms your future, and level up always. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
It's great to surround yourself with people like that. It does help. It does refresh you. If you have any actionable tips for how to do that more effectively, there's a lot of talk in this space. There's a lot of flashbang stuff, and I don't think my listeners are interested in that. How do you find the true entrepreneurs, the people who are actually taking action, executing every day? People will say that your network forms your net worth, but unless you have built something on your own or with a team that is of service to others, you don't really have anything to offer yet to that potential network that you aspire to be a part of and serve. So I'm wondering if you have any insight to that.
Yeah, we're not going to find them at the coffee shop, just hanging out. We really have to seek them out. What in our day and age, we've heard ignorance is a choice. There's YouTube, there's Facebook, there's social media. You can find people that are in the space you want to grow in. And I first consume their free content. They're spending a lot of time and energy creating things to help the world and build their brand. And I connect with them there. I'm loud with them. I comment, I'm engaging. And I want them to know my name, So if they've got a program, a mastermind group, I start with getting my feet wet and getting them consuming where I, like one program I'm in is $50 a month. Jack's was thousands. So I get in and I think at the end of the day, I want them to know that I'm a giver. I'm not just going to take and ask questions. So if I find someone that I want to follow, I'm saying, thank you. Thank you. I'm consuming this. I'm implementing this. And then what's interesting is a lot of teachers, trainers, entrepreneurs who are providing content like this have their own Facebook groups that you can join or communities that you can join. So whether you completely network with the guru themselves or you surround yourself with other people who are also interested, that can be another place to kind of up-level your network and grow. At the end of the day, it's really about relationships and adding value. And you mentioned that they're focused, right? I want to be a part of that focus. I want to go where they're putting energy and time and learn.
Connecting with people ahead of you is really important. What I found to be extremely helpful has been looking to my left and right. I was so overly focused on trying to connect with these gurus and stuff that so is everybody else. I think it's important to do that. I think your approach there is excellent because you can connect with them that way. But what I've found to find peer connection, it helps me to look left and right in these spaces. And I also am trying to not posture and not create a facade of who I am, but to actually look to my left. Oh, hey, Mike, or hey, Janet, you guys are doing the same things as me. Let's connect and let's figure out how we can help each other and create new ideas together.
Yeah.
Speaking of free content, you have a podcast, The Dreamcast, on iTunes and other platforms that you broadcast some incredibly helpful information on. So share a bit about your podcast and what people could expect from listening to that.
So I've been an entrepreneur for almost 12 years and created momentum in my space. And I got to a place where I was like, how can I keep adding value, but still pick my kids up from school? And you think about designing your dream life. Like I want to give, I want to serve. I feel like I've got a big heart and a lot of things to offer, but I also,
Denise, how many kids do you have?
I have two little boys. They're almost 5 and almost 8.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're really fun. And the drive home from school is when they chit chat and talk. It's just one of those things I don't want to miss. And so I want to be a mom as well as a thriving business owner. A podcast was a way for me to share, network, and grow my team and beyond. And so we combine science, scripture, and stories. Meaning it's success stories, but there's reasons why things can unlock for us when we understand the quantum physics, the epigenetics, the choices that we all can make in our own daily lives. It's been really fun. There's a lot of amazing stories that help us to create our own personal vision, to be 3 steps ahead of ourselves so we can have that personal motivation to stay focused and inspired.
Focusing in on your background in neuroscience and psychology, what was the impetus that caused you to transition from working at a local mental health agency to working with business owners and entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So I got into the field of psychology because I have a heart for people and I love to see people thrive. And I thought psychology was my space to do that. I worked in camps in Asheville, North Carolina, and in New York City, and loved taking people outside their normal environment and helping them to grow.
Yeah, you could definitely accomplish that in Asheville, that's for sure.
Yes, you can.
I live I don't know if I told all my audience, but I live in North Carolina, so that's how I'm aware of Asheville. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it is. It's fun. It's an adventure. And I worked with missions in Asheville. So it was churches would come and do a mission trip. So I was a counselor there, and we did home repair and roofing and all the things. And then in New York, I worked with New York City foster kids. So we took New York City, like city kids, and brought them to the country where there were bugs and grass and stars, and I saw them grow and I saw them transform. And so needless to say, psychology was my way to create a space for growth. Well, if anybody's in the helping professions, it doesn't take long to realize that it's more about policy, paperwork, and procedure than it really is about people. And I went through what they call a quarter life crisis. 25 years old, I got out of school with my master's and I got my first job. I'm off to save the world. And I realized, like, okay, this is not what I expected. I don't want to be here for 30 years. I don't know what else to do because this was all that I was taught. And I went through a couple of years of just trying to figure out my what's next, knowing that I had this heart, but not quite knowing what to do with it. And so my business came into my path, and it was a really amazing step because I could say yes and grow this side hustle while I was working my full-time business. And then eventually within 3 years, my husband and I were both able to quit our full-time jobs. And we've been entrepreneurs solely living on our business income for over a decade. What's been so cool is that my heart for people and camp and psychology and all of that stuff, I could do within my team. I could use those same gifts, those same skills, those same passions in a different way that was more fulfilling to me. I realized quickly, like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I think when it goes from your head to your heart, when you realize it's not just a career, but it's a calling, you plant roots and you dive in and you're all into the experience, knowing that this is a long game. And that shift was a couple year shift for me. But once I really understood that this was where I was going to best serve the world, it was game over. Blinders on, let's go.
What was your degree in?
I got my master's in clinical psychology. I was a therapist. I worked in mental health, like a community mental health. So it was basically government work, working with Medicare and Medicaid clients. I led a lot of groups. I, worked with a lot of families, worked with a lot of difficult and heartbreaking situations. And it was an experience I'm grateful that I had, but now I choose to volunteer in that space instead of work there.
It sounds like you faced a lot of friction, partly caused by a lot of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
What do you think launched from that? You said you now volunteer in that space. So how is your approach different now than it was back then?
Well, I find that I can use my gifts and skills within my team. So I'm working with people that actually want help and want change and have the ability to make shifts. They're hungry to learn. Whereas before it wasn't always the case, And then I'm also currently volunteering at a juvenile detention center. So once a month I go in and I do some of my teaching there, and I find that I can still give to that population, but I don't have to live there in order to be a blessing. So I'm looking for camps in the area that I can volunteer my time at, and just things like that kind of keep me in that space. But I can use my gifts and skills in a different way that is not as soul crushing.
I appreciate the honesty. That's what, obviously, as you know, that's what the listeners love, and I appreciate your transparency there, Denise. Let's talk about making some shifts, maintaining a gratitude attitude. Would you speak on that?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay. So a couple of things that this reminds me of. There's a difference between being thankful, which is in the head. We say a quick thanks. It's a thought. Gratitude is really when it has moved into your heart, and it's an emotional opening. It's an emotional thankfulness. It's an emotional overflowing. And what happens when you connect your head and your heart, when they're in alignment, when you are overflowing with this emotion, is that brings in more of what you're looking for. We become what we think about, in a sense, when you connect your head and your heart, meaning you're not just thankful, but you really feel grateful. You feel gratitude. shifts happen and you start to see a difference on the outside, but it typically has to start on the inside. So I do what I call a gratitude game every morning. It's in my journal, the Dream Life Daily Journal.
I'm going to cut you off there and share a quick story.
Oh, go ahead.
I thought you were going to use the word abundance. I was waiting for it, but you didn't say it yet. Yesterday, I was out to sushi with some friends, and we actually had an accountability meeting. We called it Accountability Fratellanza. We keep each other accountable in our life and goals and everything. We're waiting for the third guy to show up yesterday, and me and my friend were sitting there, and I ordered sushi and a bowl of rice on the side, and when the bowl of rice came, I was eating it, but it was sticking to itself, and it spilled off onto my lap. My friend started laughing at me, and he's like, it's abundance, just an overflowing abundance of rice. It cracked me up. I love that. It's appreciation versus just, oh, I'm thankful for this. It's an actual from head to heart. You realize you're thankful, but then actually feeling the appreciation is different than just gratitude.
Yeah. There were times when I wanted something, but I didn't really feel it. I felt like I wasn't deserving, or I felt like I didn't really think it would happen. And so you can say all the things you want, but we attract what we feel. So if that can go from your head to your heart, my business changed dramatically when I finally really felt like it was happening, and I spoke like it was happening, and I embodied like it was happening.
So what's your gratitude practice you were talking about?
Yes. So every day in my Dream Life Daily Journal, I have a gratitude game. There's a couple different facets to it. Sometimes it's about other people and being grateful for relationships because we are community driven. Sometimes it's about being grateful for the past, the ups and downs. Other times it's about being grateful for the future and really expecting and having the vision of what I want life to be like and kind of creating that for myself. So each morning in the journal, it's a different gratitude prompt. So then I write about it and I think about it and I picture it, and it's all facets of life. It's being grateful for health. It's being grateful for finances. It's being grateful for community and relationships. And each gratitude game every day kind of focuses on and hones in on each facet of life.
I think that's very important to do. I quickly forget how much I have to be appreciative and grateful for. My older sister and my brother-in-law have 3 little girls. So I have 3 nieces, all 5 and under. And they're just like the best gift you could ever ask for as a Funkle. I'm a Funcle, which is a Funkle. I call myself Funkle John. They don't really know how to pronounce that appropriately yet, so I just say I'm Uncle John to them. So, but when I see them, she'll send our family, we have a group text, which is another huge blessing that we're in communication. She'll send these pictures, and I'm thinking, like, I might have had a rough day where I didn't accomplish goal 7 out of my 10 for the day or whatever the case may be. I have to look at those pictures and realize that right now, the journey I'm on, the life I'm living, I already have so much wealth in my life that so many others would just die to have. And I have to actually look at that and say, I'm already here. We already have the victory from my stance spiritually, the way I stand. So it's just an amazing way of approaching life and frees you up to have healthier thoughts and create a brighter future.
Absolutely. I think that's when we pause and we take a minute to just soak in everything that we already have to be grateful for. It kind of takes our thoughts captive. It takes our emotions captive and really gives us the space to say, all right, what is it that I want? I'm grateful for what I have. I know where I'm going, rather than letting life dictate all of that.
With your background in neuroscience, would you explain the chemical or hormonal effects appreciation can have on your physical brain?
Yeah. So you're right. Everything that we think, which when we say you become what you think about, our thoughts and our emotions impact what hormones and what genes are turned on and off. So even things like cortisol, we know stress impacts our health. Stress impacts the way we view the world. And when we are in a spirit of gratitude, it decreases our cortisol levels. It increases our dopamine. It increases. And so we can impact the hormones that are released and the balance within our body based on what we think and how we feel. And often how we feel is connected to what we think. That's the whole cognitive behavioral psychology circle. And we start with taking our thoughts captive, which then can impact how we feel, which then impacts our neural pathways within our brain. The way we think creates, it's kind of like gutters. And you think of bowling, Our thoughts can go in one gutter or the next. And those thought patterns are just that. It's a pattern, and we have the ability to change that pattern. And when you change that pattern, that impacts our body on a physical level too. So we really have more impact on our bodies and on our world than we give ourselves credit for.
I'm facing a gutter of knowing I need to be getting up at 6 a.m., but instead I'm sleeping in. And it happens way too often. And I know cognitively that it doesn't align with what I say I believe and what I want to achieve. What can I do to get out of that gutter? I don't want to be in a gutter, and I know it's a neural pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a super normal habit to get into. It's just the habit of pressing snooze. It's the habit of not even, the whole internal integrity situation, like believing that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And so sometimes people will set their alarm the night before and know they're not going to get up, or know they're going to press snooze 3 times. They don't even really trust themselves to do what they say they're going to do. When you kind of go down that rabbit trail, it really can bleed into other aspects of your life. So one thought could be, instead of making it a whole hour earlier, maybe make it 15 minutes earlier, or something where it's the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, get up. Don't think, just take action. Another thing is to have what you're going to get up for so exciting for you or so interesting to you that you don't want to miss it. So I work out in the morning and I listen to my personal development, and that makes me get up because I'm excited about, I don't want to miss it. That's my only time. You know what I mean? And so I make that bigger than the desire to sleep in. So a couple things, make it simple, smaller goals, create that internal integrity with just maybe 15 minutes earlier first. And then once you start to really trust yourself and you believe that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, then you can make it bigger. And then the other thing is to make it so cool that you have to get up.
Cognitively, I know how to increase trust in myself. Like you said, keep promises to yourself, start small, keep it super simple. But how can I increase the trust I have in myself to take those actions? Most people don't trust themselves. And that's not an insult, it's just a fact. And I think, what is that stemming from?
2 things come to mind. Number one, it's habits. And again, if you say you're going to go on a diet and by noon you're eating pizza, you don't really mean you're going on a diet. So it's the habit of, I don't really believe what I say, so I'm just going to mess it up, or I'm going to just do whatever I want. The thing that brings up for me is a strong enough why. Because if your why is strong enough, you will make changes. If you don't really know why you're getting up in the morning, if you don't really know why you're starting that diet, if you don't really know and you're just kind of saying it, then of course it's not going to happen. Honing in on, why do I want that? Why is this important to me? What do I want my life to look like? Why? Even writing a list of those things can be helpful to get to that root cause. And the second thing that this makes me think of is identity. Because some people will say, I want to go on a diet, but then they think, but I'm 180 pounds. It's just who I am. And so identity shifts is a deeper shift. And that's why it can feel like we self-sabotage sometimes when we start changing, because our identity is going, wait, I'm 180 pounds. This is who I am.
Yeah.
I don't understand. And we have to overcome that through consistency, through doing it even if we don't want to, and having our why so strong that we're willing to walk through the mud to change our identity, to change our habits, and to become who we really want to become.
Yeah, all going back to that emotional, strong enough why.
Yeah. I had someone ask me one time, I keep procrastinating. I want to do this, but I'm not doing it. Why am I procrastinating? And the answer was just, you don't have a strong enough why. If you really wanted it, you'd do it. You'd find a way. You'd figure it out. You'd put it in your calendar. So start there.
Most of the listeners, you guys are people who are in the arena. You're doing something already. But for anybody who's about to make the leap or just made the leap or is up to the edge, scared to make the leap, and maybe trying a new thing as a proactive young professional, don't focus on why it won't work out or why you shouldn't do it. Just take the action. And from there, you'll be able to build consistency. Also realize it's your ethical duty. It's my belief that it's my moral obligation to be the best man that I can be for my future family, my current family, and everybody who relies on me. Once I accepted that responsibility and integrated that into who I am as a person, that's when my life actually started to change. I realized, okay, this isn't just affecting me. If I hit snooze today, it's going to affect my life. There will be a ripple effect. There are spiritual rhythms at play, and I can't allow that to affect my 5-year future self when I have a little boy or a little girl. It's once you start thinking outside of yourself in that way, that helped me a lot because I was like, okay, it's not even an option. I'm not allowed to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great point because that deepens your why. That deepens your purpose, the reason why you're getting up. And if you've ever read The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, he talks about a 1% shift. A 1% shift can take you in a completely different direction. And that half an hour in the morning of reading, of working out, or whatever it is, will set your day up, which sets your week up, which sets you in a completely different direction than if you press snooze every day.
And also give yourself credit.
Yeah.
For myself, I'm pretty hard on myself. I'll say, oh, I missed this thing today, but it's like, Jonathan, relax. You've actually done, but then I don't want to get to the comparison game of, well, I did so much more than most people. It's like, that doesn't matter because I'm not comparing myself. So it is those 1% things make a huge compounding effect, right? They make the big difference over the long haul. So like you said, Denise, with 15 minutes earlier or a half hour earlier, the previous guest, Evan Carmichael, share this. Like you said, Denise, don't even set your alarm earlier if you know you're not going to get up for it and you're going to hit snooze. Don't even do it. Set it later and see how that feels. And that's where you start being honest with yourself and taking responsibility and owning the situation as opposed to pretending you're a victim of your created situation there.
Yeah, I love that because you're right. Self-awareness and honesty with who yourself is key. And I think that's when you can really take a good look at who you are and what you want. And are you actually doing things to take you in the direction you desire? I'm gonna steal that one. I like it.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So good.
Powerful. So for the sales, life is sales. I mean, whether you think you are or not, you're in sales. Chris Lytle, author of The Accidental Salesperson, shared this on the podcast. He said, you're in sales whether you think it or not. Point is, life is sales. Grant Cardone has a book called Sell or Be Sold. And this isn't about getting the better of people, but it's about actually conveying your message effectively so then you can give more efficiently and make a bigger impact. Denise, how can we work with people who don't trust themselves? Specifically, if we're in a sales-oriented field of commission-based, that's the first part of the question, how to work with people who don't trust themselves. Should we just skip that altogether and focus on working only with people who do trust themselves?
Ooh, this brings up a few thoughts. In my business, I'm working with people that are scared all the time. They don't know if this is going to work for them. They don't know if they're going to be good at it. They aren't sure. They're kind of an employee mindset, which is where I was. Tell me what to do and I'll do it, rather than I'm an entrepreneur and I'm trying new things and risk taking. And if I counted all of those people out, that's 80% of my. And so what I've learned to do throughout this journey is to, number one, have them borrow my confidence. So I'm so confident. I believe so much. I can kind of swing the pendulum. So instead of living in fear, they're listening to positive content and they're borrowing my confidence for a season. And what happens after they borrow my confidence is that they eventually adopt their own. And so my goal isn't to be the one that motivates them, but my goal is to light a fire within them. And that may start with having them borrow my confidence. I learned this when I was doing clinical psychology work, and someone who was in a deep, dark depression would come see me. And I would say, I know you don't see it. You don't know that there's a way out of this because right now your world is so small and dark and you're in this tunnel and you don't know how long it's going to be. But I've seen people thrive. I've seen people exactly where you are come out of this with healthy relationships, feeling, like I've seen it happen. So borrow my confidence, trust the process and that kind of thing. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's me being so confident and kind of swinging the pendulum so they can grab a hold of it and then learn to grow it within themselves.
Yeah, letting that process mold you is really scary, but it's life-changing.
Yeah, it is. And I think most people start off a bit scared. Most people don't really, nobody knows what they're doing when they first get started. Having a team or a coach or a mentor that can help pave the way and cast that vision for you can be an important part of the process.
And speaking to that, you mentioned earlier in the interview, you invested in the coaching. You kind of just said it like, yeah, why wouldn't I? But a lot of people, and also you recommended starting with free content. Yes. But you were mentioning you invested amounts of money into your growth and development. When people hear that, they may think, oh, well, I'm not going to do that. Well, that's a place to start, is to ask yourself, why not? I mean, you have to realize you're worth it. At the end of the day, I started out last year. I went to an entrepreneurial conference in Ohio, and I signed up for it 9 months in advance because I knew if the date got closer, I might shy away from it and say, well, I don't really want to do that right now. It's a pretty big time commitment, get a hotel, Airbnb. So I made myself buy the ticket and the plane ticket and then just put it all in folders on my email account so that when the date came, I was ready and I had no excuse. And so this year, I'm already booked for 3 conferences, and one's in January. I'm going on a missions trip as well in March. And then in May, I'm going to Vegas for a conference, and then Ohio again in September. So I've got those booked. So I realized for myself, a way to hack my vulnerability there is to actually commit in advance. Once you decide, I feel like the anxiety and fear can be mitigated. So why is that? Why is it that the decision causes the anxiety to dissipate?
Oh my goodness. I've learned a lot about this recently. When you're an entrepreneur or you're trying something new, whatever it is, there's this double-mindedness, right? We question ourselves. Should I do this? Should I do this? I don't know. Is it worth it? Should I take this step? Should I work with this person? I'm not sure. And then you take a step, and sometimes you can even second guess that, like, oh my gosh, is this the right direction? Should I do this? And so you are spinning your wheels, going nowhere fast, wondering every single step of the way. What I've learned is that decision, it combats double-mindedness. Once you've made the decision, you can step in confidence. And again, that's the emotional part of this business. We can't create when we are emotionally distracted or stuck in the past or regretting or wondering and wishy-washy and all of that. And so decision, knowing what you want, and then like being death to all other options. I heard Jim Rohn say this. He said, suicide is the death to oneself. Homicide is the death to others. And decide is the death to all other options. Once you decide, you can have a clear vision. Then you choose to step in confidence because you know where you're going. And you also mentioned setting yourself up for success by surrounding your calendar with things you know are going to fill you. Those things are really important because they give you something to look forward to, and you can't back out. Fill your calendar because you're going to do it. And if your calendar's empty, you're going to do nothing. So good 100%. For you. Yeah.
Be strategic in those decisions is important. I have found conferences that I just mentioned, they are the ones that I said, okay, if I go to this one, it's going to help me develop this. If I go to this one, I'm going to connect with people who are exactly where I am or ahead of me, and that's going to help me a lot. And then the other one is almost kind of for just morale. And so all 3 of those conferences that I signed up for are not so that I can go there and sit there and feel momentum that doesn't exist. It's actual execution on my vision. It's not a vacation for, oh, I'm going to go jump up and down and pretend everything's going well when it's not. It's more so I'm new at this. I'm trying to do my best and make connections and serve others and give while I'm on my journey. So those pre-commitments to it, like we're saying, dissipates the anxiety and fear surrounding it.
Yeah, and they're purposeful. You know, you're going there with an intention.
Yes.
We always get what we're looking for. So when you go in with a specific intention, you'll find it. One example, when I started my podcast, I decided that I need to go where people who are doing podcasts are so I can learn how to do it well. And I went to PodFest last February in Florida. And I think there was 500 people there, but I thought, again, it's all about networking and getting to know people. I'm not just going to go and sit and leave and not talk to anyone.
Yeah.
So I actually got the VIP ticket. And this gave me access to all the speakers. It gave me access to the owners, the people who started it. I got to go to dinner with them. And when I arrived, I learned that only 3 people out of the hundreds that were there got the VIP ticket.
What? And
I was so surprised. I thought you go here to network, you go here to like dive in, all in and learn and whatever. And that conference set me up for success all year long. So I love that you're purposeful and strategic with your calendar as well.
What did you learn at those conferences?
I learned all about interviewing. I learned about introducing. I networked with other people there who were then on my show and I was on theirs. I learned about marketing and audiograms, those 1% shifts that can set yourself up.
Speaking to, the conference that you went to, what were the coolest podcaster that you met there, or the most well-known?
Well, I didn't know anything about podcasting when I got there. So there were some like bigwigs in the podcasting space, but I had no idea who they were until I got there. So they were just pioneers in the industry, people who had learned not only how to effectively teach their message and connect through this medium, but then also how to monetize that. So we talked a lot about that. I met some really cool friends. Well, I call them friends now, right? So one of them was the last person off the plane, Dave Sanderson. He was the last person off the plane that landed in the Hudson a few years ago.
Wow.
And
really?
So I ended up being able to interview him. And part of his story was that he was Tony Robbins' bodyguard.
What?
And a part of Tony Robbins' team for a season. And so he used the skills he learned from that experience while he was going down on the plane and afterwards. And yeah, it was really crazy. I also met William Hung. Do you remember? He is from American Idol back in the day. He sang,
way.
Yeah, She Bangs.
Oh
She
my
Bangs.
God.
Yeah. And I got to interview him for the podcast. And so we were like, if She Bangs guy can end up spending 4 years touring, anything is possible. Seriously. So there are a lot of really cool stories.
Wow, fascinating. You never know who you're going to run into at these conferences. What was amazing to me, because you're up and coming, like every day is another growth step. One thing that helped me a lot was going out, putting myself out there and realizing the fact that you take action actually puts you like you belong there, like you actually belong on the platform you're on, and you don't have to feel like, oh, everyone else is doing something better than me, or they're impacting more people, or you're probably doing more than most people that you're meeting. So that was, sadly, it was not an ego thing, but it was encouraging to me to realize that, hey, you're not behind and you're actually doing great, and you already have influence, and that's something that you need to embrace and respect, the fact that you have influence, and work with it.
You talked about mentors and finding people that are growth focused and maybe 1 to 2 steps ahead of you. Going to conferences is a great way to do that, because these are also people investing in themselves, investing in a business. They're eager to learn, eager to grow. So, I go to meet the people on stage. I go but I also go to hang out with the people that I'm surrounded by. And I went to that by myself. I didn't know anybody there. But I went with the intention of getting to know people, and it really has broadened my network and allowed me to connect with other people that are in the same space and wanting to grow as well. So it was really cool.
Do you have any advice for facilitating connection with people?
Yes. One thing you can do is especially if it's the speaker, there's 2 things. If it's a speaker, then you can connect with them prior to the event through all of their current stuff, right? So that's liking, commenting, posting, messaging, adding value to them and their followers. You can respond to questions on their posts and just be an engaged person on their feeds. Then they'll start to see your name. And then you can say, all right, something like, oh my gosh, I'll be there too. I can't wait to see you. All of that. Like, you can really build rapport before you even go. And then after the speech, or after, if there's time afterwards, I know in an event with 500, 800 people, a lot of times the speaker just comes down the stage and you can chat with them afterwards, is to be intentional about saying hi and saying, I love what you're already doing. I'm the one that helps answer questions. And again, build that rapport by adding value to where they currently are. Another thing that I did was, with PodFest specifically, because I didn't know anybody, was I honestly just said hi to everyone around me. And I asked people to go to lunch. I asked people to go to dinner. I asked people to go to drinks. I made myself open and available, even though, of course, it'd be easier to go, hang out in my room by myself, like no kids sleeping in. But I really did try to be intentional. And then even with the vendors, because the vendors are there to meet people too. And so I worked to network with them as well.
That's great advice. I have a story. I went to an event in Ohio. There was an intermission, and I saw a guy I follow online. And I've been, like you said, I was commenting, engaging on his content, things like that, enough to where I think he had seen my name on Instagram probably 10 times. And I went up to him and talked with him. I said, hey, like, this is me. And he's like, oh, that's you. Okay. And he followed me back, like, while we're standing there, and we chatted, and he ended up giving me a pre-release copy of his book. And now I've been in contact with him. I'm going to have him on my podcast. And this is a guy I respect, like, so highly. I was just blown away that I actually met him in person, and I was excited. 100%, I would agree with that. It is so helpful. I like that. Being intentional about saying hi, really putting yourself out there is so important. I am an introvert with extrovert tendencies. So I need space. I need time for myself to refresh, recharge. But it's weird because I can be around people and be super confident, lifting others up. But then, you know, for maybe like the next 5 days, I'm going to kind of hang out by myself for most of the time. And I do that so that I can recharge. But I don't call myself an introvert, though.
Well, it's self-awareness, knowing what you need, but you don't have to label yourself to do that.
Well said. How do we burn ships? I'm really curious. You mentioned this before. I don't know if I have the guts to do it. What's the word? I just heard a word. It was very verbose. It was like a really good vocabulary word, and I can't remember. But how do you gain the audacity to burn the ships? Burning ships in the sense that you're cutting out all of your options.
Oh, yeah.
To back you up.
Yeah. Okay. So when we quit our jobs, we were making multiple of 5 figures a month with our business, and we were still scared. It was one of those things like honestly, change is always going to have a little bit of fear. So you could be making millions in your side gig, but it's a change. And so what I realized is that you just have to decide, and there's never going to be a perfect time, and you're always going to wonder, but we had to do is listen to our heart. We had to listen to the restlessness that we were feeling. We had to kind of connect with ourselves and say, what is it that we really want? And then follow through and trust our gut. So when we trusted our gut, we said yes. And then what happens is even if it's not as fast as you want, or even if there's roadblocks along the way, which there will be, and even if it costs more than you expected, knowing that I trusted my gut and knowing that I trusted my intuition and that it was like, this is what my soul's calling me to do, keeps me focused on that path. Now, when I say make decisions and you death to all other options, I don't necessarily mean that you're so fixated on it happening one way. It's kind of like being focused and flexible. So I have a clear vision of my future, but the how, sometimes I don't know the how. And all I have to do is just keep staying, it can feel like a turtle step. One day it'll feel like a cheetah step the next, but staying focused on my bigger picture and then allowing the how to unfold one step at a time allows me to trust the process.
Share your number one tip for connecting with other entrepreneurs.
Have your eyes open and ask. Have your eyes and heart open, meaning look for them and then ask. Ask for help, ask for advice, connect with them, and ask who they know, because they know somebody that you might need to know too.
Denise, I want to jump into the Heart Healthy Hustle round. I'm going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions, and they all pertaining to the words in the title of the show. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
What activity do you use to care for and strengthen your internal character?
Journaling every morning, really connecting with myself, connecting with the Holy Spirit, and staying grounded.
How do you facilitate that connection? I guess journaling for one.
Yeah, journaling, and then meditation, like just being quiet, allowing my thoughts to slow down. I use Headspace consistently. Okay. And so I just allow my heart and my mind to slow down and then ask for guidance, ask for, inspiration. And then I kind of do automatic writing, which just means I don't have a plan. I just write and see what comes out. Sometimes, especially if I'm going through a tricky situation and I'm really looking for healing or forgiveness, or then I'll write about what I'm looking for as if it's already happened. And I'm thankful for the forgiveness, and I'm thankful for the victory, and I'm thankful for the freedom. And I try to write it out. Instead of stewing in it, it's creating the gratefulness that I'm free from all those attachments or those feelings or the negativity. And then it also helps to shift my emotions. So my emotions that are hanging on to the past or the anger or whatever, it shifts that as well. So that's not like a one and done experience. That's something that's done consistently is when I'm going through a hard time.
Thanks for sharing that. How do you maintain your physical health and avoid burnout?
I love working out. So working out to me is part of my personal development. That's part of, it's important for me. I work out for about an hour a day. It's my personal me time. So it's in my calendar. It's scheduled. It's not something that just happens. It's in my calendar. I know when I'm going to do it, and I make it fun so that I want to do it. And then I also work to drink a gallon of water a day. Those are kind of two consistent things that I work to do or intentional about doing to stay healthy.
Hustle. What's your main motivation for doing what you do?
I love what you said about it being a soul mission, it being part of our purpose. Like we're obligated kind of to live out our best life. And I feel that same way. So I'm very motivated by purpose. I'm very motivated by fulfilling like this, when you feel it in your heart, like you're being pulled. I feel like what I'm doing is a part of my calling, and that keeps me inspired and motivated every day.
Powerful. Before we go, I always ask this question. It's my favorite one of the entire interview. If you could go back in time, you see yourself on a bench in the park, a hard time in your earlier or mid-20s, younger Denise is sitting there on the bench, and your present day self can go up to the bench and sit down next to yourself, put your hand around your shoulder. What would you tell her and why?
Great question. I'm picturing it in my mind, and it's powerful. So if my future self or my past self, who was in this restless uncertainty, unsure what to do, and because I didn't know what to do, I did nothing for a number of years and kind of stayed stuck in my restlessness. I would go back to that future self and just say, keep walking, just keep taking a step, because you have no idea what's in front of you, and you're going to love every second of it. So trust the process, keep saying yes, and you got this. It's one of those things like, if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't have been so afraid. I would have stood confidently and walked consistently, knowing that all good things were coming my way. Another thought that comes to my mind is to not allow others to dictate my emotions, and to really know myself well enough to be what they call like a rubber ball, where I'm not absorbing other people's ups and downs. I can love them with boundaries. And I think that I would have advised myself to just like know who you are, stand strong in that, and you don't need to take on other people's stuff, because that can be a distraction. And I can love with eyes wide open. I can love with boundaries and keep myself centered.
Amen. I'm glad that you said wide open. So Denise, how can my listeners connect with you?
Oh, I would love to connect with your listeners. We totally need to be friends. So I've got a few places. If you go to denisewalsh.com/action, ACTION, denisewalsh.com/action. I actually have a free download available to anybody who goes and requests it. It's called the Dream Life Action Planner. And this is time management boot camp. Like, this is like, all right, what do you want? Why do you want it? And let's put it on your calendar. And I give all of my tips and tricks about outsourcing, asking for help, time chunking, all of the things that have really helped me to stay the course and create momentum in my business and in my life. And that is free for anybody who wants to, denisewalsh.com/action. And then also the Dreamcast is a super fun place to connect. And I also have an active YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram.
Awesome. So that's denisewalsh.com/action.
denisewalsh.com/action for the action planner. And then for the podcast, you can just search Denise Walsh Dreamcast on all podcast players.
Appreciate you being a guest on today's show.
Thank you. It's been awesome hanging out.
Congratulations on making it to the end of this episode. What about this episode stood out to you? Next, I need your help sharing this show. I want this podcast to impact and reach 6,000 people per episode by August 31st, 2019. And I want us to reach 15,000 people per month by March 29th, 2020. Have you been enjoying multiple episodes of the Heart Healthy Hustle? I'm thrilled to share with you an exclusive invitation to join our new Facebook community. To get to know other Heart Healthy Hustlers, simply go to thehearthealthyhustle.com/Facebook, where you can expect to see different members of our community being featured weekly in Facebook Live calls. I appreciate all of your love and support, and I will see you in the next episode. As always, be generous on every occasion, there is a story for you, and live wide open.